So you have to know where you are, you have to know where you're going, and then you have to fill your own coding with that stuff and start building the infrastructure for the future.
Thomas Schindler, thank you so much for joining me on 20 Minute Leaders. How are you?
I'm great. It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Where are you calling from?
I'm currently in Berlin. The weather's getting chilly here, and we're looking forward to hopping back to Costa Rica because we tend to hop between Berlin and Costa Rica.
Is that for weather reasons because of opposite seasons?
No, my wife is from Costa Rica, so
beautiful.
Yeah,
very very nice, Thomas. We only have 20 minutes. Your journey is so fascinating, in that if you just look at the things you're doing, it almost looks like it's exactly the journeys that are fitting for this show. These non-linear journeys that are not just about a specific profession or a specific company, but they're more holistically about what is our purpose and who are we as human beings. And I'm not going to do enough service to your journey if I try to give an outline myself. But I'd love to hear from you a little bit about what you're excited about, and maybe even take me back a few years about the different things you've done. And then I'd love to culminate also in the most recent company, delodi, and the funny thing that we talked about, the delodi or delodi.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what I'm always excited about, and what drives me, is trying to contribute towards making the planet a good place. And I say good intentionally, and I borrow it from Isabel Allende, who once pointed to the fact that an increment is, while necessary, never an end. We have to never forget that we need to head towards a good state and not towards just a better state. And the way I like to bring this home is, if you imagine 14,000 children under the age of 5 dying every day from preventable causes, that would be better, because at the moment it's 15,000, right? But it should be 0. And that's good, right? So we should never forget where we're headed. And I think that's crucial. And having this big why is absolutely critical. And just yesterday, my son, who's 11 years old, surprised me by finding Simon Sinek's Golden Circle all by himself, in preparation for a video he intends to do about some future issues. Yeah.
Wow. So how does this why integrate into the life cycle of an entrepreneur, a leader? I'd love to, because this is something that I'm personally passionate about, and in my own journey of understanding what are the types of things that I want to be working on. And just yesterday I was walking with somebody in Tel Aviv, and we were talking about what kind of company do we want to build one day. And we basically said that there's 2 things. One, we have to be intentional about our what we want to achieve. The second, it has to have a positive social impact on the world. But I'm still confused. What does that mean?
Yes. I'm continuously confused, and I nurture my confusion as well as my naive look on the world. And I think these are 2 crucial elements of trying to move towards something meaningful, and not becoming desperate at the state of the world, not becoming frustrated at the hardships that you go through when you build something. And I think this is deeply connected with the question of what is the ultimate objective you're after. And if this is a lot bigger than you, if this is a lot further out than you could possibly achieve, then you're probably on the right track. Because what I learned in building businesses, all sorts of organizations of the past more than 20 years, is that if I don't align my current activities with a larger goal, larger than life, larger than me goal, I'm never really sure whether I'm doing the right thing. And I can never really judge whether there is something that has more impact towards the goal I want to achieve. And I have a very specific goal, and it doesn't have to be, not everybody has to have that same goal of trying to contribute towards making the planet a good place, but you can also choose to have a goal to maximize your personal financial profit if you wish. But you need to have a really clear goal that goes beyond.
You have to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
Right. So Thomas, walk me through a little bit about the different experiences you've accumulated and how that goal of yours played into those different experiences.
Well, I have to jump back a little bit in time to dinner table conversations with my family, which were usually revolved around mainly two aspects. One was existential risk, like nuclear winter and climate chaos. And on the other hand, things like ion channels in cells or power microscopy. So both
How old are you when you're referring back to these dinner conversations, by the way?
I would say, so consciously, anything between 7 and 14, maybe.
Amazing.
So and that configured me, right? So that's this was kind of like the task our parents gave us for life. And it took me a long time to try and figure out, and a lot of frustration I had to go through to figure out how my role could be in that. And what I could see was always that money seemed to go in the wrong direction. Money never seemed to go where it should be, but more where it was exploiting more planet and people. And in 2003, I was part of a meeting with the head of the central bank in Germany and the former head of the central bank from Belgium. And they were there to introduce a new complementary currency in Germany. And I was there to help them build the software for that. For political reasons, this never happened, but it blew my mind anyway. And what I learned from those people was that the design of a currency has unintended emergent properties that then might be negative. And our current financial system has enormous unintended emergent negative properties. A fiat currency backed by GDP, we're not going to go into the details, but is a recipe for disaster. It is not only an invitation, but a reward system for exploitation of planet and people. So that's what I've been struggling with for the past 17 years. And what I've been more and more aligning my activities along to contribute towards a situation where we can get out of that gridlock of financial capital and broaden our perspective into other forms of capital. If I look at only financial capital, I tend to be very, very limited in my view of the world. If I look at, let's say, Ethan Rowland's 8 forms of capital, like social capital and material and living and cultural and spiritual, intellectual, etc., then the equation changes. And then you can allow yourself to act in entirely different ways, because you're not only after financial capital, which is important to get things running and to create more meaningful things, but is not enough in itself.
But I have to say, Thomas, so speaking to you, I feel like I'm speaking to as somebody who goes to India for 11 months of the year, doing meditation, doing very spiritual things in their day-to-day life, also as a job. But actually, you're the CEO of a company that delivers software solutions, and you're in high tech, right? And I'm finding this, intuitively, I'm finding this dissonance between your profession and what your upbringing and the things you're passionate about. And I'm seeing this distance because I just don't see enough people like this. I think it's incredible, but I don't see enough.
So thank you for that observation. You're to the point, absolutely. But I actually think that there is no dissonance at all. It's actually extremely congruent. If you look at especially digital technologies, and also it gets worse with sustainable or regenerative technologies, what you have to do in order to implement them successfully, you have to question your status quo. You have to question your past. So if you go into an organization that wants to digitize, move towards digital transformation in any meaningful way, which is part of what we do, you always have to ask really fundamental questions. And this is painful because what it reveals is that for the past 10, 20, 30, 100 years, your organization has been on the wrong track, essentially. You've been doing things that look embarrassing to everyone, right? And the only way to deal with this is to be very clear about yourself, to have a strong individual personal foundation. That's why all of these journeys have to start with the individual. And this is why you're totally right. I don't go to India to try and be clear about myself. We actually developed a framework to help people do that, because that is an absolute vital basis. You can do that in your everyday life and all the time. And you can also move that into your entire organization, which helps in the decision making.
So that's what I want to focus on, because I think that, I'm on a goal. I have a personal goal to be intentional. And I think it's an interesting goal because my goal is to have a goal, right? I feel that, I'm growing up, I get to have these really interesting experiences. I meet these really great people, but I'm trying to become intentional with my actions. And what I'm hearing from you is that we need to have more people in leadership positions that are intentional about their goals. And that what you started out by is saying, there are all sorts of goals and a lot of them are okay, but you need to be intentional about it.
Yeah, I mean, when was the last time you weren't intentional about your dinner, right? So let's assume you cook a romantic dinner, and you never follow a recipe without knowing what you're cooking, right?
Right.
All right. So you usually people don't go on a holiday unless they know where they're going and why and what they're going to experience, right?
Right.
So why are people going through their year, their life, their next project, their company, without really knowing where they're going, right? So I think there's three important components. You need to be very clear where you are in the vastness of all possibilities, right? Incredible, right? That requires deep search inside yourself, to paraphrase the Google thing. And
how do you get there today with abundance of both good information, misinformation, emotion, the things we're experiencing in my generation in our day-to-day lives, whether it's at university, the military, the streets in the city, we're being pulled in all sorts of directions. How can we even begin to be intentional about what we're actually feeling?
So there's this thing called the default mode network, which is guiding 90 to 95% of your decision making every day. And your default mode network usually gets coded in your first 7 years of your life.
Wow.
If those people, which we assume were well-intended, they still coded you for an entirely different world. The rest of your capacity, your executive network, knows what to do, but your default mode network pushes you back into behaving like you always behaved and like people were behaving 50 years ago. So you need to clear out that clutter first. Right? There's some techniques of how to do that. The framework we've developed is called Roots, rootsfactor.com. It's free. So anybody can just go there and sign up.
Amazing.
That helps you with uncluttering. And then, very important, developing your personal first horizon, which is necessary because once you start uncluttering, you lose the, let's say, the hold on the current situation of how things are done in society, because you're taking things out, right? You're taking programming out. So you need new programming in, and you want to be in charge of that. If you aren't in charge of that, you slip into something called a spiritual emergency. And the spiritual emergency essentially is your brain grabbing onto anything it can get hold of to make sense of. This is why there's so much conspiracy theory going on at the moment, because people have the strong understanding and notion and visceral feeling that the world is falling apart. They don't know how to play a role in that. Their entire ontology is breaking down. They have no epistemology to make sense of this and create a new ontology for themselves. So they fill it with conspiracy theory. So this is very crucial. So you have to know where you are, you have to know where you're going, and then you have to fill your own coding with that stuff and start building the infrastructure for the future.
Right. It reminds me a little bit of a phenomenon that we see all around us, but especially I see in my own country, that you have in radical religion, that a lot of the time, from an outsider's observant, it almost seems like a lot of the actions that we choose to take are sort of to feel a fear of the unknown. And we look for solutions, and even if those solutions aren't necessarily the right ones or are not ideal for the world, if they fill that void, then we take them in and we adopt them. And to me, that feels very dangerous, and it feels dangerous in an age where we can have misinformation spread out very easily. And when there's some ambiguity around us, and you have somebody in a leadership position, we're seeing it unfold every single day right now as we're speaking, with what's happening in the US, then we're seeing new ideas and new information that is not necessarily true being adopted by people that are just looking for answers. And that is something that I'm taking with me as I'm looking to become potentially as a person who people might want to listen to. I want to be very conscious and very responsible with the messages that I put out and what's true and what's not true.
That's good. Maybe you might be familiar with Robert Kegan's work. He's a developmental psychologist, and I like using his work, although it's very similar to other developmental psychologists' work. He differentiates between 3 mindset levels. He calls it a growth hierarchy in the adult life. And it is important to note that every human, given enough time, goes through this evolution, through this hierarchy, and that it's not a power hierarchy. It's something you grow into, and it's not something you can buy yourself into. So the first level is the socialized mindset. And the socialized mindset is defined by you understanding the rules of your society and living by them, becoming a trusted member, a working member of your society.
Right.
When you step out of that and you start questioning and editing those rules, you become a self-authoring mind. And this is a discrete step. This is like the moment in your life when you started turning lines into letters, right? All of a sudden you could see these letters and you could get an idea of what people were talking about when they talked about reading. And then you step out of your self-authoring mind into what's called a self-transforming mind. And now you're looking at the heuristics your self-authoring mind uses to edit the socialized mind. And this is when you start reading, when you start putting those letters into words. And you cannot unlearn that, and it's a distinct moment, and it has something to do with the complexity of your mind.
Wow. That's I'm just learning how much I don't know, and I've always been fascinated by psychology. And again, I have to say that it inspires me to meet somebody who's in high tech, but within this 20-minute conversation, we never once talked about the different projects that you actually worked on and the impact that you've brought with them. But we talked about more holistically what is our responsibility. And one of the things that I enjoyed most was that the very first thing out of the box that we said was you mentioned your goal and some of your intentions into having a positive impact on the world, but you mentioned that every person has a different goal or intention, and one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves is to have that intention, is to declutter and go through that process. And I'm definitely, you said it's rootsfactor.com.
Yes.
So I'm definitely going to check, because that's something that, as I'm growing a little bit older and maturing myself, and I see that with my friends as well, we're looking for that decluttering. We're saying we're fortunate to have these experiences and to be learning with these amazing people, but now we're going to have to make some critical choices ourselves. And with all that cluttering, it becomes very, very difficult. And so I'm definitely very thankful for that. But Thomas, I want to thank you for this wonderful conversation. Before we leave, I have to ask you for 3 words that you would use to describe yourself, or that somebody would use to describe you. And in our next 20-minute conversation,
does it have to be a sentence, or can it be
you choose whatever format you want, but I do have to have this on record that in our next 20-minute session, you're going to be teaching myself and the audience how to do a Thai massage, which we didn't get to talk about that either.
Yes, I can do that. Yes, my wife would be happy, because she's. I'll do it on her then. Okay, so I'm optimistic beyond reason.
I love that. Optimistic beyond reason. I'll try to adopt that, and I'll let you know when I get there. Thomas,
thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and stay safe and stay healthy.
You too.